300 feet beneath the Greenland ice sheet, a city that officially never existed is starting to bleed. For 60 years, the world was told Camp Century was a scientific outpost. But the truth was a blueprint for a nuclear nightmare that the Earth is finally spitting back out. The most dangerous secret of the Cold War isn't hidden in a vault or a dusty archive. It is buried under layers of shifting frost, and the clock is ticking toward its inevitable return. This is the story of a subterranean fortress that was meant to be an eternal tomb, now transformed into a ticking environmental time bomb. In 1959, at the height of the tension between global superpowers, the United States military sought a location that was unreachable, invisible, and strategically devastating. They chose the high Arctic of Greenland. On the surface, the project was presented to the Danish government and the public as a marvel of modern engineering, a city under the ice dedicated to exploring the frozen frontier. Promotional films of the era showed a pristine, self-sustaining community where soldiers and scientists could live in comfort despite the howling blizzards above. They built a theater, a hospital, a laboratory, and even a bowling alley. It was a vision of the future, a miniature civilization carved into the prehistoric frost. But the heart of this city was powered by something far more volatile, a portable nuclear reactor, the first of its kind, humming with a power that the ice was never designed to contain. While the world looked at the pictures of soldiers eating hot meals in their subterranean cafeteria, the real work was happening in the shadows. This was Project Iceworm. The goal wasn't just research, it was to construct over 2,000 miles of tunnels housing 600 nuclear missiles capable of striking deep into rival territory. It was a game of cat and mouse played in the total dark, where the only thing between the world and a total escalation of conflict was a layer of compressed snow. The designers of this frozen fortress viewed the ice as a static, solid foundation. They treated it like granite. It was a fatal error in judgment. In reality, the Greenland ice sheet is a slow-moving river of frozen water, a living entity that flows, groans, and eventually crushes everything in its path. Living inside Camp Century was an exercise in psychological endurance. For the men stationed there, the sun was a distant memory. They lived in a world of fluorescent lights and the constant rhythmic thrum of the PM-2A nuclear reactor. The walls of their world were made of ice, and those walls were always moving. The engineers had to constantly shave the ceilings and walls of the tunnels just to keep them from closing in on the residents. Every day, the ice claimed a few more inches of space. The soldiers lived with the sound of the glacier grinding against their steel shelters, a sound that some survivors described as a low, mournful scream. It was a constant auditory reminder that they were intruders in a place that didn't want them there. The isolation was absolute. Outside, temperatures dropped to 70 degrees below zero, and winds reached speeds that could scour skin from bone. Inside, the air was recycled and sterile, smelling of machine oil and ozone. The psychological toll of living in what they called the frozen bottle began to manifest in subtle, dark ways. Men became withdrawn, their sense of time warped by the lack of day and night. They were the guardians of a secret that could end the world, living in a tomb they had dug for themselves. The pressure wasn't just from the millions of tons of ice above, it was the psychological weight of the mission itself. They were waiting for a command that would mean the end of history, while the very ground they stood on was trying to swallow them whole. By the mid-1960s, the reality of the Glacier's movement became impossible to ignore. The tunnels were warping faster than they could be maintained. The steel beams were bending like toothpicks under the weight of the shifting snow. In 1967, the military realized their unsinkable city was being claimed by the element that was supposed to protect it. They pulled out in a hurry, dismantling the nuclear reactor, but leaving behind the infrastructure, the sewage, the chemical pollutants, and the radioactive cooling water. They believed the ice would keep those secrets for eternity. Their calculations suggested that the snow would continue to accumulate forever, burying the waste deeper and deeper until it was lost to time. But the calculations of the 1960s did not account for the shifting climate of the 21st century. The eternal ice is no longer eternal. Every year, the Greenland ice sheet loses billions of tons of mass. The buffer between the surface and the toxic remains of Camp Century is thinning. What was once buried under 300 feet of snow is now much closer to the light. The wound left by Project Iceworm is beginning to weep. Scientific projections now suggest that by the end of this century, the meltwater will reach the depth of the tunnels. When that happens, the PCBs, the diesel fuel, and the radioactive isotopes will no longer be trapped. They will flow into the sea, entering the food chain and haunting the Arctic ecosystem for generations. The mystery of Camp Century isn't just about what happened in the past. It's about the liability of the future. Who is responsible for a city that officially didn't exist for its intended purpose? The political tension remains as frozen as the tunnels themselves. The Danish government, which was never fully briefed on the nuclear missile plan, now faces an environmental crisis on its territory. The United States faces the legacy of a Cold War ambition that outlived its strategic value but left a permanent mark on the planet. It is a haunting reminder that nothing stays buried forever, especially the things we are most afraid to face. Today, if you were to stand on the vast white expanse of the Greenland ice sheet above the site of Camp Century, you would see nothing but snow. There are no flags, no buildings, no signs of the life that once thrived beneath the surface. But beneath your feet, the ruins are still there. The bowling alley is crushed. The theater is filled with ice. The tunnels have collapsed into jagged corridors of blue shadow, and somewhere in that darkness, the residue of the nuclear age is waiting. It is a silent witness to a time when humanity thought it could conquer nature with enough concrete and uranium. The story of the city under the ice serves as a modern parable for our relationship with the environment. We often treat the remote corners of the world as dumping grounds for our most dangerous ideas, assuming that distance and cold will neutralize the threat. But the Earth is a closed system. What we hide in the ice eventually returns to the water. The soldiers who lived in Camp Century are mostly gone now, but their legacy is resurfacing. It is a slow-motion catastrophe, a ghost story written in frozen chemicals and fading radiation. There are those who say we should go back and clean it up, to dig into the ice and remove the toxins before they reach the ocean. But the logistics are staggering. Digging into a moving, melting glacier to find 50-year-old waste is a task that might be more dangerous than leaving it alone. It is a trap of our own making. We are forced to watch and wait as the sun slowly peels back the layers of our history, exposing the secrets we thought were safe in the dark. As we look toward the future, the melting of Camp Century stands as a warning. It is a reminder that the decisions made in the name of security can create long-term insecurity for the entire planet. The city under the ice was a marvel of its time, a testament to human ingenuity and the drive to survive at any cost. But in its abandonment, it has become something else, a ticking environmental time bomb. The ice is no longer a vault, it is a gateway. And as the threshold thins, the world must prepare for what the glacier is about to give back. The tragedy of Project Iceworm isn't just the radiation or the chemicals, it's the hubris of the era. It was a time when the horizon was defined by the next conflict, and the long-term health of the planet was an afterthought. The men who carved those tunnels believed they were building a fortress for the future, They didn't realize they were building a monument to the fragility of our civilizations. The ice, which seems so invincible and unchanging, is now the very thing that is betraying us. It is revealing the scars of a war that never happened, but whose casualties might still be felt in the years to come. The silence of the Arctic is deceptive. Beneath the wind, there is the sound of water dripping. There is the sound of ice cracking. Each drop of meltwater is a step closer to the breach. We are now in a race against time, not to win a war, but to manage the remnants of one. The mystery of the city under the ice remains one of the most chilling chapters of human history. A secret city, a secret weapon, and a secret legacy that is finally coming out of the cold. When the ice finally gives way, the world will have to confront the reality of what was left behind. It won't be a sudden explosion or a dramatic event. It will be a quiet, persistent poisoning of the waters, a reminder that the ghosts of the Cold War are still with us, drifting in the currents of the deep Atlantic. We are left to wonder how many other cities are hidden in the world's remote corners, waiting for the climate to change enough to reveal their dark interiors. For now, the Greenland ice continues to flow, and the remnants of Camp Century continue their slow journey toward the light, bringing the past into a present that isn't ready to receive it. The shadow of Project Iceworm stretches across decades, a bridge between a forgotten conflict and a modern crisis. It teaches us that there is no such thing as a way when we throw things away. The Earth remembers everything we try to hide, and in the high Arctic, where the air is thin and the world is white, the Earth is beginning to speak. It is telling a story of ambition, isolation, and the inevitable return of the things we feared the most. The city under the ice is waking up, and its story is far from over. As the years pass, the legend of Camp Century grows, shifting from a military footnote to an environmental warning. It remains a place of profound solitude, where the only residents are the echoes of a lost era. But those echoes are getting louder. The ice is thinning, the ground is shifting, and the secret is no longer safe. The dark thriller of the Greenland ice sheet is entering its final act, and the world is watching to see what emerges from the frozen depths.
The melt rate is...
We can only hope that the lessons we learn from this buried city are enough to prevent us from building another one. In the end, the story of the city under the ice is a story about the limits of power. It shows us that no matter how deep we dig or how much ice we pile on top, our actions have a way of surfacing. The Cold War may be over, but its scars are still frozen in time, waiting for the heat to bring them back to life. The secrets of Camp Century are coming home, and the world must find a way to live with what was once buried in the dark. The clock continues to tick, and the ice continues to melt, as the city under the ice slowly returns to the world that once tried to forget it. The ice was never meant to be a permanent solution. It was a temporary mask for a global tension that refused to thaw. Now that the mask is slipping, we are forced to look into the eyes of our own history. The chemicals, the waste, and the broken dreams of a nuclear fortress are all rising to meet us. There is no escaping the consequences of what was built in the dark. The Arctic is no longer a silent witness. It is a messenger, and its message is one of caution. As the first drops of contaminated water begin their journey toward the ocean, we must realize that the most dangerous things are often the ones we thought we had mastered. The final chapter of Camp Century has not yet been written, but the ink is already flowing. It is a story of a world that tried to hide its teeth in the frost, only to find that the frost was more fragile than the teeth. As we move forward into an uncertain century, the ruins of Project Iceworm remain beneath the snow, a reminder that the environment is not a theater for our wars, but the very foundation of our survival. The city under the ice is returning, and this time it will not be silenced.